LIVEcast, welcome to our LIVEcast, welcome to our LIVEcast, welcome to our LIVEcast. Welcome to the LIVEcast, everybody, from Scotland, where we're all free. And can you tell everyone that we are in a student flat? I don't know. Are there any clues? Are there any clues? Maybe. Guess the gender of the flat that we're in. Just. Hello, everyone. Andy. What's that? Andy Brinkley has joined. As well as hello, Liam Steele. Nice to see you. And if you haven't said hello to Adriel Stephen is with us all the way from Sydney, Australia.
Hello.
Hello. How are you enjoying the weather here in Glasgow?
Freezing.
It's
sunny today, which is apparently an incredible rarity. So I feel privileged.
They bloom. They bloom.
Sun's out, guns out.
Sun's out. Yeah, I don't.
Well, it's a bit cold for that,
but yeah. But they shrink in the
cold. Like
Glaswegians
though in shorts.
Yeah.
Really?
Like I've seen, given the temperature.
It's a vitamin D hit.
You wear your Celtic top. Yeah. So we are up here. Why are we up here, Paul?
So we are here for Glasgow University Mission Week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how familiar people are with Mission Weeks in terms of university stuff. Depending on where you're watching from, you might know about it or not. But most kind of universities around the country, is it most? I don't really know, actually.
I think like 100 universities run some kind of events.
Yeah.
And these, a smaller bunch of them runs these events weeks.
Right, okay. So the events weeks, generally, so you get the unis, and the Christian Union will put together a week of events. Generally, there's kind of lunch bars, so that's kind of free food at lunchtime with a kind of a Thorny-esque question, a bit like our stuff. Yeah. So they get the students along, people, Christian Union invite their friends, they flyer people out in the campuses or
they troll the student population.
Absolutely.
Asking them, why does God hate, people so very, very much? And want to kill your fun, and why is God such a genocidal maniac? And this lunchtime, Paul Feasy will answer that question.
Yep, and then they drag him in, someone speaks to the question,
and the questioning
Q&A, and then similar things in the evening, although not quite as controversial in the evenings, are they? They tend to be more...
Yeah, I think the strategy is lunchtime you address the questions that people have, and then in the evening you positively present Christ from Scripture, on the front foot a little bit more. Mm. And so last night we had a games night, and in the middle of that I got up and spoke about Jesus a little bit from John chapter 1. And then tonight, an example. Dennis Jackson says we're blurry. It's much better that way, Dennis.
Yeah, you don't want to see this in high def.
We put Vaseline on the camera, actually. It's just one of my tricks. Sorry it's blurry for you. If it's blurry for you where you are, we would love to hear.
Student accommodation.
It's student accommodation. They couldn't afford to have high definition. You don't want high definition with us, honestly. Yeah, no, that's good. So like this evening there'll be an acoustic night, and maybe we'll do something. I don't know. Maybe we'll get the ukulele out. Hey?
Probably hoping for a higher caliber.
Sun's out, uke's out. I don't know.
Uke's out.
And I'll be getting up and talking about freedom. It is something about freedom, isn't it?
It is freedom.
I'm speaking. I should know what I'm speaking about. Do you know what I'm speaking about?
Liar and slave. Truth will set you free.
The truth will set you free. He was working backwards from my big hook. My big hook
deductively.
Is... Yeah. See, isn't that good? That's good.
Cookies, the hook.
I hooked you in because Jesus said the truth will set you free. So what is he assuming? He's assuming that you're a liar and a slave. So let's hope that people hang in there and don't just walk out once I call them liars and slaves. And then... students accommodate. Haha, yes. They have accommodated us very well. Thank you, Ewan and Johnny. We appreciate it.
Kindly given up their flat for us. So that's pretty good going for us, really.
Yeah. And we've been raiding their supplies. They've
got organic peanut butter. It's quite high.
Oh, really?
I'm quite surprised. It's quite high level for a student. For me, it was just Tesco value, everything.
Rice and cheese.
Yeah, totally.
And you'd borrow the soy sauce from someone upstairs. That's
Ben Williams.
Yes. Hello, Ben Williams.
Union fame.
Yes. Ben Williams used to
Feed the Hungry UK,
Feed the
as
Hungry
it
UK.
says on Premier Radio. Every time
It's,
I hear his voice.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. See, famous.
He used to study with Paul and others on the Union Theology course. If you want to do the Union Theology course, do get in touch with us at Speak Life. There might be places available in September, but let us know. Brilliant. And so what have you made, Adriel? So you're from Sydney. You were born in Canberra, same as me.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Was it Woden Valley Hospital back then, or was it Canberra?
Wow, I think I was in Woden Valley.
Same hospital.
Could have been the same crib.
Maybe.
Probably not.
Maybe. It's probably all rusted up by now. Mine's a little bit, back in the 50s when I was born. I was born on the coldest day of like the decade. I think it was June 23rd, 1978.
25 degrees still.
Yeah. Cold. It was like minus 12 or something when I was born. Is my mum watching? She could let people know. Ben's just reacted. And hello, Natalie Sprouse. Good.
And Megan.
And Megan, so born in Canberra, but you got out of there pretty fast, same as me.
Oh, 4 years old. As soon as I could think for myself.
I was out of there.
Yes.
It's great for a 4-year-old. I mean, if you're a 4-year-old in Canberra, there's everything, you know.
Yeah, what's the oyster? Yeah.
The Nappy Valley, they used to call, like, Tuggeranong.
Seriously?
Where I used to live, because it was just full of young families.
Not the smell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Nappy Valley. And then you got out of there to Sydney.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Did you grow up in a Christian home? What was going on there?
No, I didn't actually. So it was kind of a mixed religion home in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So my mum being Muslim and my father being Catholic, but I think by virtue of their working relationship, also pretty open to the ideas of lots of religions being true.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you went to uni, and what were you studying at that stage of life?
Yeah, so I was doing a double degree in engineering, robotics, and I was also studying finance and economics. Yeah, at the business school.
Robotics. Do you ever put that into practice? Do you ever do like robot wars and that kind of thing?
Oh, that was a dream. I think that was the allure. That was why I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
In practice, I was doing a lot of circuit work and a lot of programming. It's very useful, very, very useful.
Yeah.
But designing like a Wall-E or anything like that, or an R2-D2.
Yeah. It's not real.
You really got to make it before you can do something like that.
Yeah. And you didn't make it.
So, no sir.
So for you, instead of going into robotics, like what did you end up doing?
So I entered the world of finance actually, which is not an uncommon place for failed engineers and mathematicians.
Sure. Yeah.
Or people who want to make a lot of money and think very little. So it was a very natural place for me to end up.
Okay.
Yes.
So still at this stage, like if we had done, you're at Uni New South Wales?
Correct, yeah.
When my grandmother was the oldest awardee of a PhD.
Wow.
She got one aged like 81 or something.
She's one of those mature age students.
She was
asked a lot of questions.
Yeah, very mature.
Excuse me.
Out on Freshers Week.
Living the student life. Yeah. So Uni New South Wales. If we had done a mission at Uni New South Wales and we'd started talking to you about Jesus, what would you have said at that point?
Well, back then I probably wouldn't have given you the time of day, but I remember that Christians were very public, very open, very intent on reading the gospel with people,
right?
Which I thought was crazy.
Yeah.
But I really admired their candor, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Because they would say, let's sit down and read Mark's gospel one-to-one.
Yeah, they would flag you just like any other World Vision salesman.
All the societies.
Yeah.
Press it into your hand.
Yeah. Correct. They just seem like one of the many.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then you get out into the world of finance, and that's pretty like cutthroat.
Oh man, no doubt. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
It's a different industry to many. It's in terms of the competition and the number of people who are there with a variety of reasons, but basically all there to lop each other's heads off.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting.
Dog, is it?
Oh, completely. Yeah. Cashing checks and breaking necks. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So I just say that. How many throats did you cut?
Oh, yes. No scalps. You'll be glad to hear. But it's a tough environment for anyone, let alone a Christian, which I became shortly after having entered the industry.
So are you on the trading floor? Are you like one of these guys who's like,
Yeah, so that the days of open
bellies.
outcry are essentially long gone. They still exist in certain pockets, but algorithmic trading has really become the norm. People are extremely concerned with best execution, and so a lot of that is done electronically, which means a lot of orders are compiled day by day, and orders are matched almost instantaneously with buyers and sellers all around the world.
So why do they need you?
Yeah, so people have to determine what exactly they want to buy and sell,
Right.
which is a big decision.
Right. You hold their hands and sort of...
Well, yeah. So I was a portfolio manager, which
Yeah.
essentially means that I'm managing accounts on behalf of either pools of clients or large clients, and investing their money according to a particular design of the portfolio. So it might be particularly risky international securities, or like a market-wide Australian portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
But even that, you got to make a lot of calls as to what stocks to buy and how much of.
Mm-hmm. And is it kind of Wolf of Wall Street kind of mentality? I mean, obviously that's kind of the real world turned up to 11, but...
Right. Yeah, so thankfully the firm I was working for was a little more aligned with client interests. But everyone takes their haircut. It's that kind of industry. No one's doing a community service by managing other people's money.
Right.
And so there's a bit of sliminess to it, I think. No matter where you go, everyone's got a particular view, a particular ideology, a particular product.
Yes.
And even if they don't think it's necessarily the most reasonable or sensible product there, if they can sell it, they're likely to.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a mischaracterization or like a bit of a jaded kind of view,
Cynical.
but it's really is the nature of the industry. So thankfully the company I was working for, I think, was very much concerned with providing products that were reasonably priced and sensible investments for a lot of clients.
So how, like, at this stage, so you just think Christians are a little bit weird, nice, sweet, maybe, but so how do you go from that to thinking Jesus is Lord?
Yeah. So in my teens, having been raised in this multi-faith household, our existence as a family, when it came to faith, was sat at the nexus of kind of Islam and Christianity, or broad Christianity. So we believed that there was a God. I grew up believing that, and we used to pray together as a household, which was really interesting. And I just found myself thinking, like, who is this God that we are praying to?
Wow.
Yeah.
And who was that God that you were praying to? Like,
yeah, just a faceless Santa Claus, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
So if things were going well, God was happy with you.
Mm-hmm.
If things were going poorly, either there was a tough lesson to learn, or you weren't acting right. So it was deeply ingrained that my performance and my reality were inextricably linked, which led to a lot of, I think, a sense of performance really driving my sense of reality. And if I wanted to have a good life, then all I would have to do was overachieve, which is probably not an uncommon mentality.
Sure.
But I think it was really the definitive value set of my existence at that point.
So who is it who's introducing Jesus to you? How do you actually come to consider things differently?
Yeah, so in my late teens, I started reading fairly widely. I was interested in all kinds of religions. My question was, why would anyone believe anything? Like, there are all these different faiths with contradictory claims, but surely there's one that is true, either one or zero, and hopefully that one is somewhat provable.
Mm-hmm.
My little sister at the time got invited to youth group from her friends in high school, and so she started attending, and I thought, well, what better way to continue investigating than to go along to church with her, and I'll just pick apart all the sermons and make jokes about the pastor, and hopefully...
That's where I go.
Yeah, exactly.
Joke's on you now.
Joke's on you. You are the part of the joke, my friend. And hopefully come to a conclusion that Christianity's wrong, because who wants to live like a guy who died on a cross? That just sounds silly.
Yeah.
And what I found when I sat there were, firstly, my walls were up, and I was sincerely trying to be extremely critical of everything that I was hearing. But actually, what I was hearing was logical, and it was sober-minded exposition of the text, and people were living lives that were consistent with what the teaching was. Yeah. So there's got to be something here.
Yeah.
So I think intellectually I dissented to Jesus being Lord at that point even.
Really?
So that was maybe I was maybe 19, 20.
Really?
Yeah, so this is still just as I was wrapping up uni, and I was not necessarily like excited about Jesus' lordship. I just agreed to it. I was like, okay, this is true. All right,
Wow.
I'll come to church, and I'm gonna be a model Christian.
Of
I'm gonna be the best Christian,
course you are.
of course.
Yeah.
And so pretty soon I found myself running the music at my church
Right.
and being extremely ambitious and zealous. And in the few years where I was running music, I mean, music just became extremely tight. We were doing new songs all the time. People were excited about music. Everyone in the church was excited about music, except the band members who I was looking at with you. Because I was cracking the whip. I was breaking their backs.
Yeah. Cutthroat.
Yeah, I was like Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
Of my
Play it again. Play it again. Play it right.
Yeah. And I found myself thinking, wow, this is backbreaking work. And Jesus is a tough taskmaster.
Right.
I don't get it, but one thing's for sure, I'm not going to live my life in a way that's going to make me a candidate for hell.
Right.
I want to be the Christian.
With a capital T. Capital C.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that kind of continued until I was 21, 22, right?
Right.
At which point I just burnt out.
Yeah.
And when I'd started working, I'd finished this long double degree, and had started working in a really competitive environment, and was juggling teaching, like running music and doing Bible studies and being at work. And
What do you think your Bible studies were like? Like, what do you think you were actually teaching people?
yeah, I think they were very like Pharisaical. Like I was all about application and not
Right.
not very much about. And I think this is still something I wrestle with. Is all of our behaviors come from our beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Jesus is so loving in talking about our hearts rather than talking about what we do as the origin and end of our existence.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we realize that actually our hearts are the source of all that we're doing, we sincerely just throw ourselves at Jesus' feet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you don't know that,
Yeah.
and you are quite a legalist in the way that you're inclined.
But you could get away with it because you're a competent guy and you got high capacity. So it takes you longer before you kind of collapse.
Right. And it took someone really dear to me just saying, you know what? Something's not right here.
Wow.
Yeah. Someone who looked at me and said, I'm not sure there's a Christian joy here. There's a lot of Christian command and a lot of response to authority.
Wow.
But actually, are you rejoicing? Are you delighting in Jesus? And that was a question that just stupefied me.
Wow.
Because you can't contrive that. You can't make it up.
Yeah.
Dead behind the eyes.
Yeah.
No,
Completely.
grinning away.
Completely. But I was still so hard-hearted and steely about that kind of line of inquiry. I was like, no, Jesus is the God of command, and I'm obeying commands.
Right.
But eventually I just burned out.
Right.
And I was brought to my knees. And I realized that actually what I was doing was just trusting in myself. I was still Lord of myself. My ambition was my king. And I recall that Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Is that what my life looks like now? Am I resting?
Right.
Am I constantly rejoicing?
Right.
I don't think so.
Right.
Are Jesus' commands burdensome? Yeah, I think they are. And it was in that time that I just, the shackles came off, I think, for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I felt liberated, and I sincerely was able to say, Jesus, like, I love you. Yeah. And doing music in light of that, I remember I was serving in band that same week after this realization. And it was just like night and day.
Yeah.
I was singing songs that I'd sung dozens of times before, but it was as though I was singing them for the first time.
Wow.
And the band's like, oh, what's going on here? Why is it no longer like this icy environment trying to make music together? So yeah, and I never looked back, by God's grace.
That's fantastic. And so obviously, coming to Christ in a real way, you gave up the job in finance because it's either God or mammon. Can't have both, man.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, yeah, that's very funny.
I'm being mischievous.
Yes, yeah. I think working in that finance environment was actually really timely. There was a young guy who was attending our church, who was a student at Moore College, which is a theological college in Sydney, and he was a guy who worked in finance for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is that Jesus is Lord, and I want to live in a way that's pleasing to him. Like, I would love to get to know God's word better and be able to teach it. Like, I want people to have the same love for him that I do, and the same assurance that I do in my future eternity, you know? That's incredible. And he said to me, it's great you're in finance. Your work is a mission field.
Yeah.
And it's a long game.
Right.
So his encouragement to me was to stick it out for a time. And I think he knew that I was a new Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably a bit overzealous
Mm-hmm.
at the time. And so his counsel for me was to stay put for a time and really experience what it was to be a Christian in that environment.
Right.
And work for the Lord in an environment where it was particularly hard to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So name one challenge where you're called to live distinctively as a Christian, and you know, sometimes we pull it off, sometimes we don't. But how do you live distinctively as a trader in finance?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think humility is something that is not common in that environment.
Right.
People are really concerned about their personal brand, and this is not uncommon. Like this is every industry. But I think being able to sincerely listen to people and put their needs above your own, like that kind of humility was just unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it being offensive to people. If you did something kind just to someone else, I mean, it was just the kind of thing that most people wouldn't even think about. But in that environment, people would immediately think, "Oh, you want something from me?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want from me?"
Wow.
It was, and it just took a long time for people to actually see that the way you live is a consistent kind of way, that it's coming from something that's genuine, and you're not following up some kind of kind gesture with some kind of supplication or demand.
You haven't been baiting the hook. And then,
Yes, completely.
Genuinely offering. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good word. So, in the news, yesterday, terrible day on the stock market. The Dow Jones was down 4.6% in a single day.
Yeah.
What does that even mean? Tell us.
Yeah, so the Dow Jones is a composite. It's a number of stocks. It's like a portfolio. It's like a general indicator for how the stock market is doing in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mix of big stocks that people would tend to, like household names. And so you can generally say if the Dow Jones is up, the broad basket of major US companies is either doing well or is perceived to be doing well.
Yeah.
So dropping 4.6% reflects broad investor expectations being bearish or pessimistic.
Yes.
Yes.
Because wages are up,
Yeah.
and therefore interest rates are going to go up. Is that the?
That's the logic. So it's really tough to. The question of correlation and causation is an important question to ask. I think a lot of analysts are a lot more concerned with causation, obviously, but there's so much conjecture and differing views. All they can do is correlate.
Okay.
But it does seem compelling that the improved employment figures in the US and wage increases would contribute to like a hawkish interest environment, and therefore bonds being more attractive. Yeah.
Which drives interest rates up.
Well, it's more the other way around, but it just means that the relative demand.
No, Glenn.
That is the correct answer to a very different question, Glenn.
It's more that the relative demand for equities or stocks would decrease. People want to be compensated for risk.
Okay. Yes.
Which means that if interest rates are going up, then actually, dollar for dollar, you might as well just keep it in a longer maturity bond in the debt market rather than going to equity. Yeah.
Everybody got that? Good. So we brought you
financial advice.
We brought you
buy low, sell high. You know,
share prices may go up or down. Past success is no guarantee of future earnings. Brilliant. Well, we've just covered the news right there. So
absolutely.
We've covered what's new. This is what we always try to do. We cover what's new. We've covered what's news. What are people saying on here?
One person lot of questions.
Oh, have you seen Requiem on BBC One? Anyone?
No.
No.
Question 1.
Yeah. Robin Emmanuel, UEA-CU misses you. That's the University of East Anglia Christian Union misses me. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. If you're having, lots of universities are having big outreach weeks this week, so we will pray for UEA this week, and you guys can pray for us here in Glasgow.
I think Oxford's happening this week, isn't it?
Is it happening next week, I think?
Next week.
I think it's next week. And yeah, do pray for them because their speaker had to drop out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I'm sure they will find somebody. Now, the other thing we try to do on the livecast is discuss our thorny question. Paul, what's our thorny question for this week?
So the thorny question this week was, is God real? So it was the first of a 3-parter, really, off the back of a question that we got on YouTube, I think, from Hannah. Mm-hmm. So we've got, is God real? That was yesterday. And then we've got, can we trust God? Mm-hmm. Or is it, yes, can we trust God is next. And then it's, what do we do with our doubts?
Yeah. So on the is God real question, I think like one of the dangers is of casting God as though he is this like Bigfoot character or this Loch Ness monster, as though he is an item within the world, and if only we kind of analyze the world, and maybe he's hidden up in Loch Ness. Given that we're in Scotland, let's use that example. And and people often like talk about gods in exactly those terms. So like Richard Dawkins talks about, I can't disprove the idea that there might be, a teapot orbiting around Jupiter or something. I can't disprove that. But in the same way that I don't think there is a teapot orbiting around Jupiter, I don't think that there's a God either. And it just goes to show that, like, so many people, when they say they don't believe in God, you've really got to interrogate which God are you talking about? Because mostly people are talking about a super being within the cosmos, rather than, the source of all being, who is beyond this world. And you used an analogy in the video about Shakespeare. What was the analogy?
So the analogy in the video was that, Juliet in Romeo and Juliet can say, "Wherefore art thou, Romeo?" but she can't say, "Wherefore art thou, Shakespeare?"
You can't say.
I can't even say it. So she can't say it.
What hope does she have? She doesn't even exist.
We were saying everything actually around Juliet in the play is shaped by the author, but she can't see the author unless the author writes himself into the play in some way. And we were saying, it's like that with us, isn't it? That God writes himself in to it. But then, I suppose we talk as well about Romans, don't we? Right. That is God writing himself in. So there are different ways in which God writes himself into the play. Yeah. I find that one really helpful, actually, that we relate to God not like I'm a character and he's a character in the same play. Like, he is the author of everything, and he is an inescapable reality in his world. So, like, when someone says, is God real? Like, one of the answers is just like, well, he's the most real thing. He is the ground of all being. In him you live and move and have our being, as Paul says in the Areopagus in Acts chapter 17. He is this inescapable being that is pressing into you in every aspect of your reality. Which is like something that's not really the way people often go in evangelism. Often they sort of say, is there a God? And you say, oh yeah, there's this bit of obscure evidence over here. And if you're really clever, you can piece together this, and this, and Bob's your uncle, and it's a hop, skip, and a jump to God. Which is not, I don't know, that's not Romans 1, is it? What may be known about God is plain to people. Yeah, and we were talking about this a bit yesterday, I think, when we were walking to one of the events and saying, because I think one of the questions that came up on one of the lunch bars was, if there's so much evidence, why don't people believe? And I think it came out in that lunch bar. Ultimately, it goes back to sin, doesn't it? People are blinded, that it is plain to be seen.
Yes. For
those of us that are being saved,
right?
But like the message of the cross, is foolishness to those who are perishing.
But we suppress that truth.
In the very same breath, we'll say, you'll look at things and say, well, this clearly has a designer, this is clearly this. But then on the scale of everything, looking at the world and everything, people go, oh no.
Yeah.
They completely just dismiss that idea. I think we were talking a bit, weren't we, about going back to the image we used in our post-truth video about the football managers.
Right.
You can two football managers, controversial penalty decision. One team goes on to win off the back of it. Two football managers look at exactly the same evidence,
right.
But one wants to believe it's a penalty, and one wants to believe it's not a penalty.
Yeah.
And actually, your own desire,
totally,
then changes what you do with the evidence.
And I don't think it's even in that example. It's not as if, okay, I'm the Man United manager, and we're playing against Liverpool, and it's definitely not a penalty. Like, it's not as though that manager is seeing this obvious event and then consciously reinterpreting it
and saying, I must change this.
Literally, in the very way he sees that replay, he is seeing something different, and how much more is that the case on a spiritual level?
Yeah, and it came out again in the lunch bars, didn't it? People don't, in some sense, people don't want to believe,
right?
Or in a great sense, people don't want to believe, because there are ramifications. That people say, give me evidence, and then if you were to say, well, what about this evidence? They go, well, I won't accept that evidence. I won't look at your Bible,
right?
And I won't listen to this evidence. And you're like, well, hang on a second, is it that you're just putting up the barrier? It's not the evidence that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's you.
It's you. So there was a guy who once said, I said, what would make you believe? And he said, if the stars spelt out the Ten Commandments in the sky, then I believe. And you might think that is raising the bar to galactic heights in terms of the evidence, hurdle that you've got to get over. But then I did the whole fine-tuning of the cosmos thing with it, which I don't ordinarily do. And largely I don't do it because of what then happened. Because I then said, well, are you aware that, for instance, if the cosmological constant that describes the expansion of the universe was, 1 part in 10 to the power 80 faster, we would have flung out into heat death, and oh, my wife's calling. Decline. Sorry, honey. Switch that off. If the Big Bang bangs an infinitesimal amount harder, then we would have flung out into heat death, and if it bangs just not enough, we crunch back together. Yeah. But we've banged just right, and we're in this Goldilocks zone of not too little, not too much. And that Goldilocks zone is it's 1 part in 10 to the power 80. And, you can do all sorts of illustrations of how ridiculously, tiny that number is. And I was trying to do all these illustrations with him about that. And to get him to the point where I was saying, okay, the fact that the stars are in their current arrangement and that you are here to observe them is a miracle, orders of magnitude more improbable than the fact that those stars might spell out some Hebrew letters, right? If they happen to also spell out some Hebrew letters, that would be a sideshow, just piggybacking on this gargantuan miracle. Yep. Don't you see that? And you're like, no, but I want them to spell out the Ten Commandments. And you're like, well, and so it's not. I think things like the fine-tuning argument can bring you to the point of showing someone it's not more evidence that they need. Right? There's motivated reasoning going on. There's confirmation bias that is going on. They don't want to believe. People don't want to believe, and they're not seeing the world rightly when they're in that state.
But that's also not to throw out evidence side, is it? Because there are people for whom they will hear and they'll go, okay, and it just removes a hurdle for some people, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They hear it and they go, okay, I thought this was completely objectionable.
Yeah.
But you've now told me something.
Yeah.
And actually, I can see how that's reasonable. That doesn't make them therefore go, Jesus is Lord.
Yeah, right.
But it can still be a helpful thing, can't it?
There is a category in the New Testament for inquirer. In 1 Corinthians 14, there is someone who comes into the Christian meeting and they're on the fence and that sort of thing. So charitably, if I'm asked a question in a mission setting, I should charitably assume this person is an inquirer, and they genuinely want to know. But also, I've got in the back of my thinking, actually, the general human condition is that our objections to faith are actually smokescreens for unbelief.
I always used to say, when I was doing youth work, and teenagers would say, oh, people at school, they say this or they say that, or they ask me this question. And I'd always kind of say, look, well, you could say this or you could say that back, all those kind of cosmological blah, 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 if it was that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I said, but at the end of the day, you just want to talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
Because people don't become Christians because they suddenly go, yeah, this is quite improbable.
Right.
Jesus is Lord, it doesn't,
Right.
it doesn't
Yeah,
happen,
that
like that's a leap in itself. And actually, you just preach Jesus.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Adriel? Like, how do you, if someone says, God, where is he? I don't see him. Is he real? How do you start helping someone with that question?
I think the only place we can really begin to go is getting into the Word together.
Yeah.
Personally, because any claims that I make about God are just going to be speculative unless they're grounded in what the Bible claims to be God's revealed Word, not just the words of men, but the words of God. So I think that's an important place to orientate the conversation and actually have a mutual grounding. But at least we're looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
And if I'm sold, and this is the evidence for why I'm sold, then we can actually have a constructive conversation on that ground.
Yeah, very much so. We get into in the video. We talk about what if you're in a room, you don't know how you got into the room, you have no memory of how you got into the room, but there's no windows, no doors, no entrances, no exits, and within the room, a lot of theories come about what's the meaning of the room. Is there anything beyond the room? And maybe hopeful Harry says, I've got a feeling in my guts. I'm just sure that somebody up there likes me. Or scientific Sally does the cosmological thing, and she says, oh, the room is very well designed. Maybe there's a designer. And then skeptical Stephen says, well, I don't know. I don't know what to compare this room to. This is the only room we've got, so let's just try and make this room as good as we can. And what always kind of wrong foots people is people kind of think that as a Christian, I should be on Harry's side or I should be on Sally's side. And I think the Christian position is not Harry or Sally, and it's not Stephen. It's that someone comes into the room, bits of plaster come down, and into the room comes a figure, and he says, I'm from beyond, and I'm here to rescue you. Does that change the conversation in the room? And I think that's the Christian position. There's been something that's like come into this world.
Yeah, I was just thinking how many times I must have heard people say, well, if God's there, why doesn't he just show up? Why doesn't he show himself? And it's a bit like, yeah, and it's like, well, he did. That's kind of the point, isn't it? But don't. So, but it's like, why doesn't God just show himself? Well, he did. He literally became flesh, walked among us, and people go, oh yeah, but did he? I'm not prepared. I don't actually like the evidence about that, so I don't want to believe that evidence.
Yeah.
So,
well, why doesn't he do it here right now?
Yeah.
You're like, did you read what we did to him last time?
Yeah, what does that mean? Yeah, I believe in God if he showed himself. Well, he did, and we killed him.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
which again goes to what's the heart of someone? Like we don't roll out the red carpet when God appears, and that's not the natural state of the human heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so God actually showed up in fulfillment of hundreds of prophecies over thousands of years. He fulfilled all of them on the money. He healed, he spoke as no one has ever spoken before. We've based civilizations on his teaching. He kept on claiming to be God. He actually beat death the way he said that he would beat death, never to die again. He rises up again and says, you can have me forever for free. Like, if that's not God, just pack up and go home.
But if you could just rearrange the stars, that would just tip it. Like,
yeah. But we've got good news. And I think, so often, the God from which people are running, it is kind of is the kind of God who would rearrange stuff. Isn't that interesting? Like, God, if God exists, he would be the kind of God who would tell the cosmos to behave, right? That would be his big message. Thou shalt not.
I hear it as more like God is there to, it's like show us another trick, And then you get that in John's Gospel, don't you, a little bit? Like the people had seen his signs, but, Jesus said, they believed in him, it says, but Jesus knew what was in the heart of men and he didn't entrust himself to them. And entrust is the same word, isn't it? He didn't believe himself to them. Because I think they've seen Jesus' signs and miracles and they're like, ooh, show us another trick, Jesus. And Jesus knows that's not what he's there for.
Yeah.
He knows what's in the heart of men.
And isn't that interesting? Like I said this last night in my talk, that in John's Gospel, his miracles are not known as miracles or wonders. They're known as signs because they point to the kind of God that he is. And what is the kind of God that he is? He's not this sideshow, like, make a mountain blow its top or make a donkey tap dance and sing show tunes. That's not the kind of God that he is. Like, all his signs that point to who he is he heals the sick and he feeds the hungry and he gives dignity to those with shame. And you're like, well, isn't that why would you run from that God?
And also, I mean, like, the signs thing is good. If you go to, if you go to the States and you're trying to find the Grand Canyon and you're following the signs to the Grand Canyon, you don't just find the sign and go, these signs are great, let's have some more signs, but I don't need to get to the canyon itself. The point is, you want to get there, don't you? You want to get to the canyon, you want to get to Jesus. And that's where the good stuff's at.
That's the money. Awesome. Well, we hope that's helped you think about some issues when people raise the "is God real" question. If you've got some things that you do when you're answering that question that people ask, we'd love to hear it in comments. Robin Emmanuel has said at UEA, "Our mission week went well. Thanks. Lots of interest. We'll pray." Brilliant. Glad to hear that. UEA, I think I did their mission, was that 3 years ago, Robin? And then, like, the next year, it was amazing. Like, they got this big marquee, and it was just insanely good. Like, but
after you?
After me, yeah.
Okay.
Not when I was there. It was good when I was there, but it's just, next level. Once you get rid of Scribner, you're off and away, you're running.
So next week's livecast will be without Glenn.
Let's be with all our videos, all our Christmas videos. All the best ones don't have me. It's just the truth. Actually, next week I will be in St Andrews. You'll be back at home on half term, and I'll be preaching I'll be preaching the gospel. I don't know what Paul's just going to be watching Netflix.
It's true.
Yeah, being frivolous. So, stay tuned for next week. On Friday, our podcast, hopefully this is recorded well, and this will go out on the podcast on Friday. And this coming Monday, we're not going to have a thorny question on Monday. We're going to have a talk from this week in Glasgow on the Monday. And we hope you enjoy that.
Are we recording all 5 nights?
I don't know. Adriel was my cameraman. Well, do you have your camera?
Not on me right now.
Not on you right now.
There we go.
But you're not far away, are you?
That's true.
I was going to say, we could film them all and say what they are, and people can vote which one they want to see. Fight it out. We've got a phone number you can call. Premium rates.
Yeah. That dates you, Paul.
Phone calling people?
08950. That really dates me. Brilliant. Well, I'm off to give my freedom talk, calling people liars and slaves, and pray for me, pray for the people,
pray for them.
And thank you so much for watching. We've still got 9 people, no, 8 people. We're all
going.
7, 8.
Never back again. Any advance on 8? There we go.
7. Okay. Sorry.
It's the 6-hour live cast. It's just us. 5 hours of us just doing this.
It's like a thermometer. The telethon. We've got to get to 10 viewers. No, we never will. 9! All right. We'll never finish. All right. God bless, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Take care. See ya.